Thanks for joining us on the NRT Now podcast, part of the largest Christian music site online, newreleasetoday.com. Sit back and relax as we chat with your favorite artists, introduce you to new artists, and more. Now here's your host, Jake.
We're here with Joseph of Seventh-day Slumber. Joseph, so glad to have you here.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this one because normally when I tell my wife who I have on the podcast, say, hey, I have so-and-so happening, she's like, who? Like, what? I have to play the song. I have to do all the stuff. And I told her, like, hey, I have Seventh-day Slumber on the... Do you remember them? And she's like, yes, I do. And so I was so excited. Like, this is kind of a unicorn situation for me here.
Nice.
I think we first found Seventh-day Slumber when Air One was more of a rock station. And I know that's starting to date more and more back the farther and farther it goes. But...
Yeah, man. Well, they definitely have changed a lot. And one of the things that I loved about Air One, and not that I don't like Air One now, but one of the things that I loved about Air One is they had so many different artists and they were breaking new artists as well. I mean, Seventh-day Slumber, many people heard about Seventh-day Slumber through the early Air One days when we released I Know and Candy and Caroline. Those were some pretty amazing times for new artists because there was an outlet for them.
It's crazy just how that shifted over the years. Now it's Spotify. I mean, to a certain extent, I don't know how many rabbit holes I've gone through Spotify, like artists you may like. And about 8 taps later, you're, who on earth is this?
Yeah. Well, one of the difficult things about Spotify is that there's approximately 44,000 uploads or submissions per day. While Spotify can be, a useful tool in finding new artists. If you're make it on a playlist or something like that, it's difficult because you're in the pool of 40 to 50,000, submissions a day. And it's a tough place. And not only were stations like Air One around and giving opportunities, there were Effect Radio and so many other different radio stations out there that were similar to Air One. Air One was obviously the biggest, but it gave like a new artist showcase or spotlight and gave fans an opportunity to hear these new artists and pick. And it was really cool.
And just the landscape of everything has changed so much, just even with the technology like in our cars. If I'm honest, that's really where I listen to the radio. So my radio listening I take that back. It's more when I don't want to plug my phone in. Like if I'm just running to the church that's 10 minutes away or whatever, I'm not going to plug my phone in for a 10-minute car ride. So, there's that buffer of radio.
Yeah.
Any long car trip, any long commute, like I'm just plugging my phone into my car and that's what I listen to on the way, for the horrendous hour-long commute that I have some days.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that makes it so convenient is that you have all of your music in one place and you're not back in the day. The convenience was a 5-disc changer or a 10-disc changer. That's like, that's if you wanted to be real convenient. You still had to load it all up and still switch, CDs around. But now you obviously have the convenience of having a playlist and several digital streaming platforms that you can switch back and forth to depending on which DSP or digital streaming platform you like. But obviously, bands, they are still grappling with the pay rates and which is now with the Music Modernization Act, things are becoming a little more fair. But at the same time, one of the difficulties that artists are having, and I think that Seventh-day Slumber has done it really, really well over the years, and I'm not just bragging on our band, I'm just saying that it's something that I've seen a lot of artists really struggle with, is using this platform and not looking at it in terms of what is the fraction of the cent that I'm going to be paid, 0.003% of a penny that I'm going to be paid. And you can get caught up and focused on that and be mad at Spotify, which I was for a long time. But one of the things that we did well as a band is we transitioned to, okay, look, I'm not expecting any money from Spotify. They're using me. I'm going to use them. And now, we have our merch store up there. We're able to send messages, put messages up on our Spotify, and we're pushing people to our website. A website is something that a lot of bands just forgot about. When MySpace and Facebook hit, people don't have websites anymore. And man, you're losing so much there. And people go, well, nobody goes to websites. That's not true. people do go to websites because, when social media is down or they're restricting algorithms and things like that, fans want to, and they haven't seen you in their news feed, they'll go try to find you. And if you don't have a website that they can go to and see all of your updated stuff. But anyway, that's what I went down a rabbit hole down there. But I just think that artists need to quit looking at Spotify as like, oh man, I need to find a way to get more money. Yes, we are working on that with like I said, the Music Modernization Act. There's a lot of cool things happening there where artists are going to be able to start getting paid the fair wages, but it's going to be a couple of years down the road. So in the meantime, make sure your merch store is up there. Make sure that you're engaging with your fans. Make sure all of your platforms are optimized. Have all your right pictures up there. Don't have like Instagram has 3 different band members than Facebook because you have an updated Facebook, or it's an old album, but then Instagram's a new album and Spotify's a whole different album. Make sure you're optimized through all of your platforms from Twitter to YouTube to Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify. And you'll see that you're engaging with your fans on a better, much deeper level.
I think your Rockfest Records president hat just showed just a little bit too much there.
I guess so, yeah.
Well, that's one of the other things that's happened with you guys over the last few years is just opening the Rockfest Records label, and artists like the Letter Black are hanging out with y'all, which I think they took a pause for 5-8 years, something like that. Yeah,
they did. We love having the Letter Black on Rockfest. It's been an amazing partnership to have them, as well as Fireflight. Fireflight is iconic, and Fireflight was just certified gold. And we're honored that we get to have these artists on Rockfest, as well as new upcoming bands like The Protest and Relent and Amongst the Giants. Obviously, Seventh Day Slumber, I'm kind of partial to, is on Rockfest.
A little bit, should be a little partial.
And so we're excited. We just released a new album, Death by Admiration, and it's doing well. But it's great to be in good company with all of these artists on Rockfest Records, and to be able to have the honor of being the president of Rockfest is really, it's kind of weird to say that, but it's also very cool. And our distribution is through Capitol Universal Music Group, and we have an amazing partnership and relationship with them as well.
Well, I want to touch a little bit on that, just because it seems like Christian rock is a little bit more of a very niche subgenre, it seems like sometimes, which bums me out a little bit because I'm one of those guys that's kind of all over the place. Like, I'll go from CCM, and I'll even dabble in some of the country-ish sounds that's coming out right now.
Yeah.
I get it too, because, I was saying to my wife, she doesn't always like to go to the rock shows, like the loud and in your face. I'm trying to work on my kid to like it. It's kind of an uphill battle. I feel like I'm failing as a parent. But it just seems like it's, just a little bit more of a niche market. But there's just like the power that comes just with it being loud. I think it was like August or September. I actually met your son while he was here in Dallas, Fort Worth, your drummer.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
With Spoken.
Was he playing with Spoken? Oh, yeah. Okay. That's what I was. Because he plays with several bands, and he's an amazing drummer, and my wife and I are extremely proud of him. And obviously he's the drummer for Seventh Day Slumber and has been since he was 13 years old, it's amazing to think about that. I mean, the kid's a prodigy, and he was better at 13 as a musician than I am now. And so it's crazy. But yeah, he plays with several of those bands. So you met him at when he was playing with Spoken in Dallas?
Yep. It was the Finding Hope Music Festival, I think.
Okay, is that with Brian Headwelch and the rest of them, or was that the one outdoors?
It was indoors. This year, Social Club Misfits were the ones that headlined.
Oh, yeah. I watched it on, because I always love to see my son play, so somebody was live streaming it, and I watched that.
Yep. So it's just really cool to see just how Christian rock just reaches people in those kind of areas.
Yeah.
Just when guitars are loud, when you walk out, your ears are still ringing, but there's just something that happens.
I think that I agree with you. I think it's a very niche or however you want to pronounce it type of genre. But at the same time, obviously cranking them guitars up to 11, rocking out and just letting it all out musically, it hits people hard. But I think that there's a deeper element, and the deeper element is in those Christian rock songs. Man, the lyrics are so vulnerable and so deep and so emotional and in touch that's what I find. Like, I'm not putting CCM down. Obviously, Seventh Day Slumber has had success at CCM Radio. You know, I'm thankful that we're one of the very few rock bands, along with Skillet and Disciple, to NTFK to have crossover songs that go from rock to the CCM world and CHR world. But at the same time, when I listen to some of the CCM stuff on the radio, although I think it's great that people are happy, joy, and we're talking, but when I hear these rock songs, some people say, well, that's so depressing. I don't think it's depressing. When I listen to it, I hear people that are in touch with real, raw emotion, what they're dealing with. Just because I'm a Christian doesn't make me immune to pain, to struggles, to life hitting me hard. And people need to know that, you know, you go through the same things they do. The difference is now you have a place you can go for strength, and that place is in Jesus Christ. And that's what Christian music is, Christian rock music. Now, is CCM, does it have some of that as well? Sure it does. I mean, I love Mercy Me's. Oh, what song was it? Just there are a couple of releases ago where he was talking about how
I'm gonna look this up while we're going here.
Yeah, it was a real vulnerable song, and he was talking about just life and the industry and trying to be everything that you want him to be, and those kinds of things. And I heard the song a couple of times, but it really hit me when I heard them perform it. They performed it live on one of the news stations or something like that in the morning. And I was like, man, this is a powerful song. So I'm not saying that CCM doesn't have those, but what I'm saying is, when in this rock genre, Christian rock genre, I feel like it's just almost more vulnerable. And some would say too vulnerable, but I don't think so. I think it meets people where they're at. And these young teenagers, and not just teenagers, man, a lot of adults are listening to Christian rock. Our demographic is 18 to 44, and it's not just males. It's about 60-40, 60% male, but 40% female. And it just meets people where they're at. And I think that just resonates with those powerful lyrics.
Is it Even If? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah, Even If. I think that's what it was. Yeah, that was a powerful song, man. Love Mercy Me. Bart called me when Blaze, you know, he's 20 years old now, but when he was 8 years old, we almost lost him. We rushed him to the hospital. We didn't know exactly what was wrong. He wasn't acting right. We took him to the doctor. The doctor said, look, his blood sugar, we can't even read it. It's that high. You need to rush him to emergency now. We don't have time to wait on an ambulance. We got him to downtown Nashville at the hospital, and you know, they got him stabilized, but he was almost in a diabetic coma. We found out at that moment that he was a type 1 diabetic. I mean, and I was really hurting. I was really struggling. My wife was too. We didn't know much about it. We were scared to lose our son. We were going through all these emotions, and we were praying, and I was like, God, why my son? You know, and all these different things. And I'll tell you what, Bart called me. I guess he got my number through a friend of a friend of a friend. I mean, he's Bart. He can get my number. And so he could track it down, I'm sure. And so he called me, and I was sitting on the hospital floor next to my son's bed. He was asleep. He had IVs in him, and I mean, the IV in him and needles in him and different monitors going off, making beeps and noises. And I was really going through it. And my wife she had fallen asleep. She had been up all night long, and she was in that little chair that they had there at the hospital, and was just sitting on the floor. And I was hurting. He called me, dude. Sorry, man. Just got a little emotional, but man, that meant so much to me, dude. I don't know how I jumped off onto that, but that was just a big shout out to Mercy Me, man. That's, yeah.
Man, what a story. And I mean, I'll say that resonates just a little bit with me. I think we're just more talking about the power of just Christian music. I mean, rock has its thing, but just music in general, we'll split a little bit more towards that in a second. But I mean, when he's 1 now, but when our little baby was born, for the first 3 weeks, he did nothing but lose weight. He wasn't eating. You know, the diapers were weird. We won't go into graphic details there. What wound up happening is we had to take him to the children's ER. He was 10 days old and had an IV in him. You know, we have a picture of him just sitting there with an IV, just a little scrawny and stuff.
Yeah.
This was during the height of, I think, the second wave of COVID. So only one parent. It was amazing that both of us were able to get into the ER, but I had to leave my wife with him overnight, and go home and take care of the other two. I had to walk away and drive away from them, just not knowing I couldn't be there. I couldn't do whatever. Just listening to the radio on the way home. I can't remember if I plugged my phone in. I honestly can't remember, but I mean, what I do remember is just the right songs came on just the right time, where, praying all the way home as well, but just that power of just that encouragement and just that presence of God right all the way home. And probably one of the harder things that I've had to do is leaving my wife and kid at the hospital.
I can imagine, man.
You're talking about that raw emotion side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about Decipher Down, because they're going out on tour with you guys, which
yeah,
awesome.
I'm excited about that.
You guys better come through Dallas. That's all I have to say. Or at least
we're
close.
working on it right now. Yeah, no, we're working on it right now, and we're hoping to lock that date in the next 3 or 4 days.
I'm going to be hitting you up when that happens, because I'll definitely be there for that.
Yeah.
But their song, I mean, this is an old one. I don't think I'm going to think of the song. Like, this is a proven thing on this that I've proved on this podcast. Like, I can't think of the song name right ahead. But
yeah, I go through that a lot. Even with my own songs.
Well, that's even worse, man. That's
yeah, it is. It is. I'm ashamed that I said that.
Well, I mean, when you've been doing this for a while, I mean, it's you have a catalog of a ton of
13
songs.
albums.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's bound to happen eventually.
Yeah.
But no, it's Best I Can is the song that I was thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that song.
There's a lot of times where I know that I just don't feel like I'm doing enough, or I'm right enough, or I'm the spot that I want to be. And just the soundtrack of that, just being heavier and just being able to not necessarily like scream it out. Just it kind of matches the emotion and the rawness of it. And I think one of the things that the American church has done a little bit is just try to soften kind of the emotion, like just pray about it and it'll be okay. Or, sometimes I just feel like not being okay, it just has a stigma attached to it, and just that raw and wanting to be mad, wanting to scream, wanting to question, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's starting to come around a little bit. We're starting to have a little bit more of a conversation about that right now, but I just feel like that's something, at least in my personal experience, has just been kind of backburnered a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's because people, they take it as, well, you're just not trusting God, and you just don't trust God. You need to let go and let God. And meanwhile, these are some of the same people that are like the most anxious people, yelling at the lady at the drive-through or whatever, because the fries order wrong or something like that. And it's like, look, man, we all struggle. We all go through things. And if we want to talk about sadness and anger and pain and anxiety and struggle not being biblical, then we may want to eliminate some we'd have to eliminate some people. We can't eliminate these people. What I'm saying, if you're saying that that's not a humanistic trait that we all have, there's a lot of people in the Bible, from Job to Joshua to David to Paul to the list just goes on. The disciples, I mean, we can go on and on and on about men and women of the Bible that have dealt with anger, pain, even questioning God. Am I saying it's right to question God? Obviously, I'm not saying that's a good thing to question God. We should trust God with our whole heart, but there are times where moments of weakness in our lives. And in those moments of weakness, it's important to have people that aren't going to look at you some type of weird way, like, man, brother, I thought you were a Christian, that can say, man, you know what? I understand that you're hurting. I may not be going through the same thing you're going through, but I understand what pain is. I know what it means to have a burden. I know what it means to feel anxious even, or to worry about your kid who's in the hospital. Even though you trust God, you're still hurting and you're still going through things. And I don't feel like we extend that grace to people as much as we should. But there are a lot of amazing, good, godly men and women out there. I want to make sure that I'm not Christian bashing, because I know that there's a lot of great Christian men and women of God that have helped me. Like I said, Bart called me, and and my son got to meet him, and Bart, was explaining to me how he went through the same thing with his son, because his son is type 1, and Bart was diabetic, or is diabetic. So he reached out to me in a moment, and I don't mean to keep trying to bring that up, but I'm just saying, to your point, that this is someone who understood I wasn't okay at that moment. And instead of telling me that I had to be okay at that moment and I better trust God, man. You know, he did meet me where I was at and then encouraged me. And with that encouragement, I was able to, he redirected me, you know, like back to like, this is what God did for me.
Yeah, once again, I agree with you there. It's not, Christian bashing. That's just been kind of a thing that's, I think happened in the church.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's just on a very personal level. Like sometimes I just don't even know how to handle or be real or be raw, or especially as guys here, like you've got to be tough. You got to have it together.
Yeah.
It's easy to just push it away and just say, hey, look, trust God. It'll be all right. It'll, whatever. But it's just so much tougher to just deal with that raw and that real emotion until it comes up and smacks you in the face, and you just really can't run away from it.
Man, last night I played in Bloomfield, New Mexico. We were in the middle of like 4 different Indian reservations, and there was a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of anger at God, and a lot of, I talked to a lady last night who on the 2nd of February, it was her brother's birthday, and he had committed suicide a couple of years ago, and she was angry at God, and she was like, I've just been hurting, and I know that I need to trust God, and I need to give over to God, but I'm just so angry, and I'm hurt. And I talked to a little girl who was 11 years old as well, who came up to me and was like, thank you for tonight. My mommy and daddy got into a big fight and they're getting a divorce. And someone invited her to this concert while her mom and dad are dealing with what they're dealing with. She got invited from somebody at the church, and it was just a rough home life. But you know what? Sometimes I don't have the answers they're looking for. I can't even tell you how many people have come up and said, look, my son committed suicide or my daughter committed suicide. You were their favorite band. So I started listening to you because of them after they passed. And I wanted to come to this concert and tell you thank you, even though they lost their battle to depression or whatever it is, that I just wanted to be here in this moment with you, with someone that meant so much to my son or daughter. And I don't have the words for you, but what I do have is to be present with you in that moment. And I feel like Christians, and this isn't Christian bashing, but I feel like Christians are missing this. They're missing opportunities. They're missing opportunities to love people and meet people where they're at and help to restore those people with a spirit of meekness and gentleness, because life comes at us fast. It hits us hard, and that's all of us. And so sometimes what I've found is I don't have to have the right answer all the time. So if you have a friend that's going through something and you're like, well, I want to be there for them, but I've never been through that. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what I can say. Well, it's not about what you can say. It's not about what you say. It's what you do. Will you be there? Sometimes just sitting with them while they cry. Sometimes just listening to them or just being there, not saying a word is enough. And so I just want to encourage those that are listening right now. Look, man, there are people all around you that are hurting, struggling. Make sure that we're not missing opportunities and that we're not always talking. As you can talk someone to death, you can talk someone off the cliff. I mean, like it's just important. It's just very important.
So as we wrap up this podcast episode, I just want to touch a little bit on this new album that just came out. That is just absolutely phenomenal. What was the heart and what's the common theme through this album here?
Death by admiration is not about admiring death. Someone wrote on my Facebook, was like, dude, why are you guys are a Christian band, but you're admiring death? That's not what it means. Death by admiration, what it really means is not wanting to let down the people that look up to you so much. I mean, being in this band, I have people all over the world that look up to me, that admire me, that care what I think and come to me when they're struggling, hurting, and send me messages and want to talk to me, and they admire me so much. But I'm a human being and I go through difficult times, and I went through a difficult time. I was struggling with alcohol and I didn't tell anybody because I'm the lead singer of a Christian band. It was so crazy how I ended up having this addiction because God set me free from a $400 a day cocaine addiction, and I'm married. I got 3 kids, and then now this, like my wife has to see me this way. My kids are seeing me this. And I was really struggling, but I didn't want to reach out to anybody because I didn't want to let people down. And so the things that I was really dealing with in my life that led me to grab a bottle of alcohol instead of dropping to my knees and praying like I should have been, is there were very personal things from my childhood, things from my past that I don't talk about to anybody. And so alcohol is how I ended up dealing with it. I felt so horrible inside because I felt like I was living this double life. I loved our fans and I cared about our fans, still obviously do, and always will. I don't even see them as fans, I see them as family. And I had two pastors that, and still do, that I look up to, but I didn't want to tell them because they admired me too. So anyway, I was slowly killing myself. And that's what death by admiration means. And there's a guy in a trophy case and he's holding a Grammy and there's other trophies around him. And it's basically stands for suffocating in your own trophy case. Here I am admired by so many people, but I can't even be honest and real. I should have been, don't get me wrong. I should have been, and I'm not making excuses. What I'm saying is I wasn't, because I didn't want to let people down. And it ended up almost killing me with alcohol addiction. That was several years ago, and God set me free from that. And I thank God for that. But there are so many out there that are still struggling with that, pastors that are struggling with it, worship leaders, people in the church, husbands, fathers, moms, wives, sons, daughters, struggling with these things. And it's tough. So that's what Death by Admiration, the title stands for, the song stands for that. But there's a lot of different things, from not having the opportunity to say goodbye to a loved one before they went, to there's anthems about like, God, shake me up, light me up inside. I'm willing to let go of everything I'm holding on to that's not of you. Just shake me up and make me new. Like, it's not like a really like depressing album. There are like some hardcore anthems in there. There's a song called Snake Mouth featuring Relent that deals with like uppity Christian people that are Pharisees. And like I said, it's the title speaks. Snake Mouth, says it all. There's so much about this album. And, little known fact, it's the most streamed album that we have ever released to date and the highest engagement in the digital world. Obviously, back in the day, we've debuted at #1 on Billboard and things like that. But in a streaming and a digital age, we've released several albums in a digital age, but this is the #1 streaming album that we have ever released. And my son, Blaze, and our guitar player, Weston, wrote about 70% of this album. My son wrote about 70% of the melodies and about 50% of the lyrics. And Weston and Blaze wrote the guitars and breakdowns and things like that. So
it's awesome. Well, it's an absolutely phenomenal record.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing you when you do come through Dallas. I'm going to be hitting you up in 3-4 days, seeing when that is, seeing where it is.
Yeah.
And man, just appreciate you spending the time here.
Hey, dude, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging out with us for this episode of the NRT Now podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And special thanks to Neon Feather for providing our theme music. Make sure to check out newreleasetoday.com and our socials for more great content. See you next episode.